Okay, so good morning, everybody. I hope we're all doing great. We're pressing on. So today we're starting with session 7. We're making progress. Can you believe that? We're on session 7 already. So what have we got today? As usual, a quick recap. In the last session, we did cover sprint planning, user story estimation. We looked at epic features and stories, including task and subtask. And we looked at the invest criteria that helps us ensure that we achieve the definition of ready by making sure our stories are small, that we can estimate them, that it is independent, it is valuable, it is negotiable. That helps us towards achieving our definition of ready. And we also looked at the Fibonacci sequence. Now we had a slide, back and forth on the theme, and the word that escaped me was the word strategic. Strategic theme, that's what we really mean. And what that is when we are within an organization, every organization has a goal. They have objectives they want to achieve. Now, how they then achieve those objectives is through their strategic themes. So we're going to think about the various things that we can do in order to achieve that higher goal. So in this instance, in this particular example, if we say, take for example, the government of, let's even take the United Kingdom here. We have housing shortages, we have housing issues, and they want to solve housing problems. There are so many strategic themes that they can come up with. So one could be, let's reduce the interest rate so that people can get, one-digit mortgages in terms of their interest. It could be, let us relax on our countryside laws so that more land can be made available to developers. It can be anything. It can be, okay, let us build more houses. Okay, so strategic theme, it's really important to me that you understand how that fits in. So for a higher objective, which is to solve our housing problems, there would be different strategic themes. I hope that clears the slight fuzziness that we had last week. Is that clear now, or do you have any questions with that still? Because for me, it's always important that things are really clear before we move on. So are we clear with the strategic theme fitting into a higher objective, organizational objective? Please type or say something. And if you have any question, just unmute yourself and ask before we move on. Okay, I can see a chat. Okay, so if you're good, so Sylvia is saying good. Everybody else okay? Can you please respond so we can move on? Just type a yes or unmute yourself. Okay, good, good. Okay, it's always important that we are all moving at the same pace. Cool. All right, then let's move on. Now, when we talk about agile teams, like I said before, it could be a feature team or it could be a component team. Now, when you are a feature team, if I use the building a house again as an example, if you are a feature team, it means, for example, that detached house, it is this team, this Phoenix team that will build it from start to finish. You're responsible for it, okay? That means you're a feature team. That means we are reducing dependencies by making sure that one team is responsible for this feature, okay? So you have your backlog and everything in that backlog is down to you to do because you are a feature team. Somebody is having problem with their audio. Doddy, log out and log back in. Log out and log back in if you're having problems with your audio. I don't know what else I can say. Okay, so that means you're a feature team. And all the components that has to be produced is produced by the feature team in order to deliver the potentially shippable increment. However, you may well be a component team. Okay, by the time you go out there, you could find yourself in a component team or find yourself in a feature team. Wherever you find yourself, it's the same principle, it's the same work. It's just that when you find yourself in a component team, As a Scrum Master, you have more coordination to do, okay? Whether, for example, if I work as an Agile coach, so which means I'm working one layer above. I'm dealing with several teams. So as an Agile coach, there will be even more work for me to do in terms of coordination, because it means we are developing all these components, and at some point, we need to make sure we can integrate these components in order to deliver that feature. So as you can see, a lot of dependencies here and there, a lot of coordination going on, more interaction going on, more, clarification needed, okay? And this is why we try to, as much as possible, move away from component teams, okay? You will find this, situations out there. So a feature team will deliver this bicycle from start to finish because they are a feature team. A component team will mean one team is doing this, another team is doing that, another team is doing that, and at some point in our timeline, we must come together to assemble this bicycle as one feature. Okay? Again, I'm using something tangible here just to explain it. But of course, if we're talking about digital products, then it's not so tangible, okay? But it is the same concept, right? Same concept. So when we have component teams, we need more coordination. We need more alignment. We need more dependency management, more communication. And of course, there's a risk. Because we are not a feature team, there is a risk of delay. There is even a risk of quality, okay? Quality could be compromised, all right? So bear that in mind. Now, when we talk about working in an agile environment, we are talking about working in an empirical environment. Empirical meaning experimental. Experimental. We plan, we do, we check, we adjust. That is what PDCA means. Plan, do, check, adjust. Sometimes in a lean environment, you will see something like build, measure, and learn. Build, measure, learn. It's the same empirical process. That is why we're working in sprints. So when we deliver, we do a retrospective, we figure out what we did well, what could have been better. And then that means because we have that feedback, we can improve on our next sprint and do even better. Why are we working like this? If we go back a few steps to our waterfall, it takes us so long to deliver value. And by the time that value is delivered, or should I say that product is delivered, does it really add value to the customer? 9 months later. 9 months later, this product goes to market before you get feedback. Whereas when you're working in this empirical way, you put out a minimum viable and you start getting feedback early, okay? And it says here, we can't really be sure that it will deliver the intended business value until it gets to production or gets to the market. Scrum, therefore, tests early and often whether the system being developed will deliver value and exactly what that value will look like. And this is what we're going to start doing from next month. So we start working iteratively and see what value we are adding every time we deliver an increment. What value are we adding every time we deliver an increment? The quick feedback loop helps us to then pivot, helps us to adjust. So if the customer comes back saying the seat on the bicycle is not comfortable, then the next production changes whatever the problem is. But imagine if we put out 2 million bicycles out there and practically every customer comes back saying the seat is not comfortable. We would have wasted time, we would have wasted a whole lot of money. Our reputation would probably be at risk. But if we put out a few bicycles and we have a few people buy them, come back to tell us what their experience is like, then we can adjust as we go along. So Scrum unleashes the brain power of many minds on a problem. It's a small team, it's self-managing, and we have a shared purpose as a small agile team. And the benefit here is that because we are small, interaction and management between us is easy, And because we are small and working with the agile mindset, we are able to leverage the amazing brain power everybody brings to the table so that we can create great products. Okay? Now, for every software development life cycle, these are the steps we go through. We do our requirements analysis, we do our system design, implementation, testing, deployment, and maintenance. So if, as a business, we develop a website for a university, for example, which is what we're going to do, when the website is fully functional, and I use the word fully functional because remember, we are not going to wait until the website is fully functional before we hand it over to the university for them to start using. From the first 2 weeks, we're going to deliver something to them, albeit skeletal. But we're going to deliver something to the university in the first 2 weeks of our sprint so that they can start having a digital presence. Because the case study is saying that this university does not have a digital presence yet. They are not out there. So we're going to deliver something that gives them that visibility immediately. But over time, they will have a fully functional website. That's going to be our project. So everything you see right now on my screen happens within your sprint, but happens in short beats so that something can go out quickly. But of course, before we start the sprint, we have some kind of high-level view, which we're going to be looking at soon. So when we talk about, if I go back one step, when we finish testing our system, we deploy our system to production. Maybe, maybe not, like I said before, because the release is something you plan. So after the testing and after we do our sprint review, where the stakeholders will come, the product owner is there, and they accept our deliverable, we may deploy to production, we may not. That is a business decision. And of course, after delivering this website to the university, there must be ongoing maintenance. It's like you driving your car out of a car showroom, having paid for it. 6 months down the line, you probably need to service that car, or after so many mileage, you need to service that car. So digital products are constantly being reviewed for maintenance, especially given that you're getting feedback about how your site is performing. So as a student, if I try to register on your website online and I couldn't, I probably would send a message to support to say, hey, I'm logging in from Singapore. I'm trying to do my registration online, but it is hanging. I download the form. I tried to put in my details, but it's hanging. That is feedback. So when they now get that feedback, they need to now go and research, investigate why somebody from Singapore could not, have the kind of experience that they hoped everybody would have. So maintenance. So when we release a software, we are releasing into production, probably. This is a call center. A call center is a production environment. A call center is a production environment. So imagine this is like a call center for MTN. People are calling in. I can't load my credit. I can't do this. I can't do that. I paid for credit. I didn't get it. Whatever. People are calling in with their problems. This is a call center, or a call center for a bank. Now, this is why release is a business decision. If we develop a new feature or a new functionality and we release it into the production environment, look at the risk. Just looking at this call center, there's a huge risk. There's a huge risk that we may break something in the process. There's a risk that we may break something that is already working, something that was working fine. But because we brought in another functionality, we have broken something that was, already working fine. That's why before we release functionality, we do different types of testing, regression testing, user testing, different types of testing, unit testing, all sorts of testing, to minimize the risk when we go live. Now, going live has to be a business decision. I've said this before, and I'm showing you this so that you understand why going live has to be a business decision. As the chief service operation officer responsible for these people working here, my job is to maximize availability, to make sure that the system these people are using is up and running and that it is running well. So if you tell me you want to release a new feature into this environment, I'm going to be very wary. I'm going to have huge concerns. And I'm going to be looking for a time that is best for us to release that functionality into this environment so that we can see, so that we can minimize the risk. Now, things have moved on. About 20 years ago, when I worked as an Oracle DBA with British Petroleum, we used to have downtime. For example, in order for this business center, this call center, in order for them to upgrade to a new software or to a new functionality, we may need to have an outage of 3 hours. So we would have planned the release into production and we would have sent an email to them saying at 3 o'clock on Friday, we are going to, release a new functionality. We need, downtime in order to do this release so that they can, be aware of that time slot so that also they can, inform their users, their customers ahead of time to say our call center will be unavailable from 3 p.m. on Friday. The customers doesn't need to know. All you need to say is that, there's a maintenance job going on with our production environment and our services to you will be unavailable from 3 p.m. on Friday. We apologize, but we are doing this so that our systems can work better and we can better serve you. I'm sure you have received messages like that so many times. This is what is happening behind the scenes, and that is why you were getting those messages. Before I move forward, is that clear? Please type, is that clear? Do you need more explanation? Because this is so important.
Can I ask a question, please?
Go ahead, please, Grace.
Yes. So my question is, so in those days when I know that they still send those messages even now.
Yes.
So I guess we can, that's part of release management, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Because, all right, okay, thank you.
It's part of release management. That is why I keep saying release is a business decision. You can't just go about interrupting a production environment anyhow. It has got to be planned, and it has got to be planned properly. Franca, if you're there, can you add value to this? Because Franca works as a tester, and recently they had some issues in their production environment. Franca, do you want to add value to us? If you're there?
Yes, not just as a tester. I work as a tester and a release manager. So
good.
And yes, if you are going to go into production, especially for critical applications or any systems, it's very important that businesses are aware, your customers are aware, especially in a banking situations. I'm sure sometimes you would have received information from your bank telling you that on Sunday morning, you may not be able to access your online banking, or you may not be able to withdraw cash. That's because releases have to be planned and agreed by all stakeholders. And it's not just you have to anticipate those ones you can see and those ones that maybe internationals and whatever. So everything has got to be, the criticality of it has got to be from the top. So release management team don't just even make that decisions. All the businesses must approve that decision to launch. And like Mary said, sometimes, like we had a launch last week that was very successful at the end of the launch, but by Monday evening, P1 incident was raising live because there was one missed impact, and that could affect. And if it hadn't been like we had people on watch duty, it could have cost the company millions and millions. So, and that is when everybody goes, yeah. So release management is just part of, it has to be planned ahead.
Exactly. Thank you very much for that, Frankas. Okay, so we get the picture. That was someone, giving a real account of what happened recently. So releases are always a business decision. And of course, this is the stock market. Imagine all the, work going on behind the scenes here. Imagine interrupting this kind of environment. It comes at a huge cost. And you know what? You just might be working for one of those companies that are developing software for this kind of environment. I mean, Franca is working for one of them. Okay, so we focus on delivering the highest priority business value as defined by the customer, which is the product owner. Pieces of functionality are delivered to buyers so that the organizations can start using parts of the system early in the development cycle. Buyers might even choose not to have the entire system built if they are satisfied with only a subset of the total functionality they initially envisioned. Now, let me expand on that. I'm doing all of this because we're going to start in our sprint soon. I have a backlog of 30 items, okay? We are developing, we're planning, we're going to sprint, we plan, we're going to sprint. There's a particular value that the customer is looking for. By the time we have delivered, maybe say out of those 30 items on our backlog, but maybe by the time we have delivered 18, the customer has realized their value. If the customer has realized their value at this point, there's no point continuing. The customer might say, okay, move on to the next piece of functionality for me or move on to something else for me because the value I need for this, I have realized it. And this is where working the Agile way is amazing. Working the Agile way ensures that you only spend your time and resources on what adds value. And once that value has been realized, resources can be diverted to something else. Unlike the waterfall way, where we are just doing everything, whether it adds value or not. Because we have identified all these requirements, we are going to walk through these requirements and deliver everything. So which means you are spending time working on what adds value and also what probably does not add value. And this is where Agile negates that totally, okay? So we are always working on what adds value, okay? And as a Scrum Master who understands the Scrum process, remember the reason you are called a Scrum Master, even though they are trying to change the name Master now, well, not change it immediately, but they are deliberating on it already, is that we are saying you have mastery. So the word master comes from mastery, that you have mastery of the Scrum process. And because you understand the Scrum process, you are able to teach and guide and facilitate and coach a Scrum team, okay? So that when things start to go wrong, you are able to bring them back on track. So as a Scrum Master, you are looking out for anti-patterns. You are looking to make sure that they are working well. You are looking to make sure that they are using the Scrum processes properly. When you now begin to observe anti-patterns, you help bring them back on track, okay? That is part of your role as a Scrum Master. I will come back to this later when we start doing product visioning. So let me leave that for now. Now, the Fibonacci sequence, we looked at it the last time, but if you can see, there is no 4 here. There is no 4, number 4 here. But in this example, it says 4 here. I forgot to mention that have you noticed that there is no 4 in the Fibonacci sequence? So be mindful of that. Maybe some people don't care they are using it in terms of their relative sizing, but just to remind us that there is no 4 in the Fibonacci sequence. So when we talk about sizing, we have the Fibonacci sequence, and we also have teams that use what we call T-shirt sizing. So a piece of work comes in and they are saying, okay, this is extra small, this is small, this is medium. That is a really big job. That is extra large. Okay, so it can be small, extra small, things like that. They use that kind of sizing. So what does this tell us? It tells us that as a team, we can decide how we want to go about our relative sizing in order for us to bring about consistency. And I'll tell you what I mean shortly with that. This is what I mean here. So when we say the Fibonacci sequence is 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and we want to use it in our estimation, we might use it in conjunction with T-shirt sizing just to visualize it and to make sense of our sizing. If you remember, when I used the basket of oranges, we had our reference. And our reference was that first basket of oranges that takes 5 minutes to fill up, and we called it 1 point. So in this instance, we can say that job, filling up that basket, is extra small. That is why it is 1 point. Now, filling up 2 baskets is small. That is why it is 2 points. Filling up 3 baskets is a medium-sized job. That is why it is 3 points. Now, of course, in the development environment, we're talking about digital work here. We're talking about programmers. We're talking about testers, user experience people. So based on the effort that is required to deliver a story, that is where this conversation is coming in. That is where this conversation is coming in. And it will become clearer as we move on. And as you know, we talk about story point, we talk about velocity. These are the 2 key elements there when we are estimating. Story points and velocity. Story points are used to estimate the size of a user story. And as you can recall, it is relative. It is relative. And when we say we are sizing user stories, the total, if we have a feature, then all the stories under that feature makes up the size of that feature. Okay, so it's a unit of measure. And we use planning poker to assign, story points to our stories. We use what we call planning poker, those poker cards. How does that work? Now, nearly 2/3 of projects overrun. 64% of features are not used, which is why we stop using the waterfall for digital projects. As you start your sprint, initially you will not have a velocity. When you start your sprint, you will not have a velocity. So it becomes a guessing game until after 1, 2, 3, 4 sprints, you begin to see your velocity. So there's no velocity at the start, but over 3, 4, or 5 sprints, your velocity will start to emerge. And again, don't be confused. It will all become much clearer when we start doing the practicals, okay? So when we talk about sprint planning, if you remember, we have the first part of the sprint planning and we have the second part of the sprint planning. The first part of the sprint planning, the product owner says, oh, these are my priorities because this is what I want us to achieve by the end of this sprint. And then the second part, and that is where they size the stories. That is where they size the stories. So here, what have we got here? We've got a team here doing their poker planning. First part of their sprint planning. So there's a board somewhere where they can see the story. So there's a product backlog somewhere. They can see those stories. So let us assume they've picked one story. So they pick a story. They read the story. The product owner explains the story because there's always a rationale behind the story. The product owner explains the story and then they decide how much effort it might take to develop that story. So let's say we have a story that reads, as a student, I want to be able to buy my parking pass online so that I can drive to school. Let's assume they've just picked that story. Now there's a conversation going on. So the development team, this is not the product owner now. The product owner is there. The product owner has explained the story. Now, amongst the development team, they are now talking amongst themselves. They are now talking about that story. Okay, we have a student who wants to buy, who wants to be able to go through the process of paying for parking and having a parking space allocated to him or her online. What are the things we need to do in order to deliver this functionality? So somebody is saying, okay, we have to do the database. We have to make sure we can get the name of the student. We have to make sure we can link it to the fact that this student is actually a student. So which means we need to use a database somewhere. So if Merilanio comes on this website, I click on parking ticket, parking space, and a form comes up for me to fill that form. If I put my name and put my student registration number, I must be verified. So there's a security angle to it. So as part of this development process, how do we verify that Merilanio is actually authentic and is actually a student of this university? So what are they doing? They are thinking of all the work that is involved. So let me give you a simple example we can visualize. Imagine I live 5 minutes away from the station in my area. So we have a train station and my house is 5 minutes away from that station. So which means every day it takes me about 5 minutes to walk to that station. If I then have to go and see a friend who lives 10 minutes away from the station, which means I'm going to go past the station, and this friend lives another 10 minutes walk roughly, that means my journey is 15 minutes. So if my friend calls and say, Mary, how soon can I see you? I'll say, you'll see me in 15 minutes. Because I have done the estimation in my head. It takes me 5 minutes to walk to the station. It's roughly another 10 minutes for me to walk to my friend's house. So I tell my friend, I'll see you in 15 minutes. Now, I'm not going to my friend's house alone. I'm going with my daughter. My daughter then tells me, Mommy, we can't see her in 15 minutes. Have you forgotten you have to branch the surgery to collect your prescription? So my daughter reminds me that I have to divert briefly, go to the surgery, pick up my prescription. And that's going to take roughly another 10 minutes. So now I call my friend back and say, sorry, I'll see you in 25 minutes. Now, what has just happened here? I just told somebody 15 minutes. My daughter could hear me. I had forgotten that I had to pick up my prescription on my way. But my daughter heard me, she remembered, and they said, oh no, Mommy, you have to add another 10 minutes to that because you have to stop by and pick up your prescription. I hope that is making sense. That is what is happening here. Somebody, they're having a conversation about a story. Can somebody stay muted? They're having a conversation about a story. And that conversation is looking at all the variables, all the factors, all the things that they need to do in order for that story to be considered ready and done. In order for it to be considered done this time, because now the story is ready. The story is ready, that is why they are talking about it. Otherwise, they won't be talking about it at all. It's a waste of time if they don't understand the story. So this story that they are talking about now meets the definition of ready. So now the conversation they are having about this story is so that they can meet the definition of done for the story, the acceptance criteria for the story, and everything else that needs to go with it. So they're having this conversation. They're talking about this story, this parking ticket, this student user who needs to buy a parking space. And then somebody says the story is a 1, for example. And then somebody else says, no, this story is not a 1. This story is a 5. It is not about me being right and you being wrong. No. It is about the conversation we can have around this piece of work that we need to do. It is about the conversation. So what is the conversation? Mary said this story is 1 point. Tunde said, no, Mary, this story is 8. The question is, why is it 8? And then Tunde goes, have you forgotten we have to do the back-end database? Have you forgotten we have to do verification? Have you also forgotten that our data for testing is dirty and we need that data cleaned up before we can, continue with this story? Whatever the bots are. So the bots are coming in. oh, Mary, have you forgotten we have to do this? But we also have to do that and do that. And then I go, oh, yes, that is true. I forgot. Just like the story of me going to see my friend and my daughter is saying, Mommy, have you forgotten we have to pick up your prescription? And then I increase my estimation. I then call my friend and say, no, I can't see you in 15 minutes. I'll see you in about 25. That's what's going on here. So when we have that conversation, we then do the planning poker again. This time, because of the conversation we have had, I'm now probably agreeing to that side to say, yes, actually, Tunde, you are right. By the time we do this, do that, yes, that the effort for this job is about an 8. And then we do another planning poker. And then this time, we have probably a more consistent sizing. This is what we call planning poker. So when there are discrepancies in the sizes, it's not about who is right or who is wrong. It's about the conversation we can have to come close to a consensus. Okay? Any questions so far? Any questions so far?
Can we relate when the user story is broken into the different parts, are they those components as well? Could we say that those are the components?
Of course, you are working with components. In order for you to, just like the bike, in order for you to give me a bike, you have to produce those components and assemble them together. But you are a feature team. You could be a feature team or you could be a component team.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that the user story is what that team is working on, and it could actually be a feature.
It could be a feature, it could be a component.
I think it's probably a feature, yes. If it's a feature, then it has to be broken down to components.
Of course. You will get to the point where you are breaking down your story into tasks. We are not there yet. We are still at the story level. A story could be a component. A story could be a feature. But there's a very high chance that if your story is still at the feature level, then it is too big. Is that making sense, Grace?
No, I don't want to go that far. I'm just relating what you're saying.
No, but when you ask questions, it's important for me to also make sure that people understand it. So, ask questions, it gives me an opportunity to elaborate.
Oh, thank you. No, that's not. Yeah, so I understand that far.
Okay.
What I just want to confirm is that the work that the developers are doing at that specific meeting for the story is breaking it down to components, perhaps.
No, okay. Let me go back one step. At this point, you could be breaking down. So let me just go back a step. Before even your plan, before you get to this point, you have tried as much as possible to break things down. Remember, you will not be doing this if your stories were not ready. Are you with me? You will not be doing your poker planning.
I understand that. Yeah.
Okay. You will not be doing your poker planning if your stories are not ready. But however, in the process of this conversation going back and forth, you may find that a story is still too big. When you have a backlog, you have epics. You are breaking down those epics into story as much as possible. As much as possible. You want to make sure you understand the story. You've broken it down. It's independent. It's this and that. And you believe your story is ready. And for the most part, your stories will be ready because you've tried your best to make sure your stories are ready before you now eventually put them into your sprint backlog. However, while you are now trying to size the story, after breaking them down as much as possible, and you are now trying to size those stories, you may find that they are still too big in the process of this conversation going on. Initially, you felt the story was small enough. And then now you are trying to estimate the story. And that is one of the indicators that a story is still too big. That is one of the indicators. When there's a lot of discrepancies in sizing a story, there's a very high chance that that story is too big. So somebody is saying 8, another one is saying 13. Oh, we have to do this, we have to do that. And in the process of that conversation, remember the first value of the Agile Manifesto. individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We are so interested in the interactions going on. As a Scrum Master, that's what you're looking out for. We are so interested in the interactions going on. So in the process of this interaction going back and forth, we may draw the attention of the product owner to say, we need to break this story down into two. This story is still too big. Based on our conversation, what we have here is like 3 stories. So we break it down. So instead of having a story that is 13, maybe we now have a story that is 5, 3, and whatever. Because based on the conversation we had. So you readjust things at that point. But our goal here is to understand how POCA planning happens. So you take the story, you size the story, based on our understanding of what needs to be done with this story. Everybody picks up their POCA card. Their POCA card comes in decks. So everybody has a deck. So I pick up a number to say, I believe this story is a 3. Somebody else says this story is an 8. We have a conversation. Why am I saying it's a 3? Why are you saying it's an 8? And eventually we come to a consensus. So the question I'm now thinking, you are thinking in your head is, what if we do the POCA planning the second time and there are still discrepancies? What do you do? So let us assume we do it the second time and we even go as far as doing it the third time. So if we do it the third time and somebody said, and we're still working on this story, and some people say, everybody says 5. Let me say, okay, 5 people say 5 and 3 people say 8, or even the other way around. And this is the third time you are doing the POCA. Which number will you go for and why? Which number will you go for and why?
I would go for 8.
Who said 8? Okay, Grace, fine. Why?
Okay, the reason is it's better to have 8 than 5 and then find out that we can't finish the story, or that the story is actually bigger than we planned.
Fantastic.
So it's a risk. Yes.
That is the answer. Because we can't continue playing poker, continue. No. You play it the first time, the second time, maybe the third time. Okay, to really ensure that everybody has thought about everything they need to think about. So that third time, that's where you stop, and then you go for the higher number. Okay, because like Grace just said, it makes sense to go for the higher number. It's like a tailor bringing me, it's like me taking something to the tailor. It's better for the tailor to tell me to come in 3 days' time than for the tailor to tell me to come tomorrow and then I get there tomorrow, it's not ready. That kind of thing. That's the kind of risk Grace was just trying to explain. So it's better to go for the higher one, because if we go for the higher number, after all, by the time we are working down our sprint backlog, if there's room to take on extra work, we will call the product owner and say, hey, we still have 2 days to go, or we still have 1 day to go in our sprint. What else can you add to the backlog for us to do? That can also happen. Okay, so this is how we play planning poker. The conversations are very, very important. Now let's talk about velocity. So once it is sized, it then goes into they now go into the second part. Once they've sized their stories and they've taken what they want, they now go into the second part of their sprint planning. And this is where the development team, the product owner is not there, the Scrum Master can be there so that he can help them in terms of what is going on in terms of the process. And they are breaking down the story into tasks and maybe even subtasks. At this point, they are probably now estimating in hours. Oh, for me to do this login will take me 2 hours. For me to do this sign up, it will take me 3 hours. That is now where they are estimating in man hours. Now, let us move on to velocity. What is velocity? It is a measure of a team's rate of progress, calculated by summing the number of story points assigned to each user story that a development team completes in a single sprint. So we've just seen the picture of a team sizing their stories. Those stories will ultimately be broken down into tasks. But let us assume they've taken into their sprint backlog about 15 stories. And by adding up all the story points, so some stories are 5, some stories are 1, some stories are 3. If you add all those points together, let us assume it gives us 90. Let us assume we have a team of 9 people. This is just for me to make to do easy maths. So let us assume they now picked 90 points. Huh? If this is their first sprint, for example, we are coming together as a team. We're going to develop a website. We don't have velocity. So we have nothing to guide us to say it is 40 we can do, it is 50 we can do, it is 90 we can do. We have nothing to guide us. But based on our experience as developers, we will, when we start having conversations about what we want to develop, we will use our various experiences as a guess. We will just be doing guesswork until our true velocity emerges. So, because we are a new team, we don't have velocity, it becomes a guesswork. Okay? By the time we have done 3-4 sprints, we will begin to see what our velocity is. So based on the total number of stories that we committed to after our first sprint, how many did we deliver? So let us assume we committed to 90, but we only delivered 70. Fine, we are a new team. We don't have a velocity yet, but we have noted that velocity, that velocity that we have for this sprint. We have noted that we were able to deliver 70 out of 90. This was our first sprint. Our first sprint has just ended. Now you tell me, when we now do our retrospective, we talk about everything, and we are starting our next sprint, what will you commit to for the next sprint planning? So when we now start another sprint, during the sprint planning, when the product owner is saying, I want this, I want this, I want that, and by this time, all the stories have a size. Okay, some are 5, some are 8, some are 3, and the product owner is saying, I want these guys, I want this, I want this, I want that. What will be your guide in your conversation now with the product owner? What will you do with that 70 that you had in that last sprint? Anybody?
So that would be your team's, your guide would be the team's velocity, knowing that, okay, well, especially you've done more than one sprint, knowing that, okay.
No.
Just on, based on sprint. Okay, so we can say, okay, I think I'm going to base it on our real life experience as a Scrum team. So after the first one, we saw what the velocity is, but we also took into consideration the fact that in between that sprint, there were 2 people that needed to take emergency days off. So we took it into they had not the emergency day, or they had 2 days holidays planned in between the sprints. So that actually, we kind of felt that, okay, that affected the velocity.
No, you're taking that too deep now. You're taking it to the, I don't want you to go that deep yet. Just based on that number, my question is, you have just finished the sprint. I understand what you're saying now, and I will give more examples like that. Okay. But you have just finished the sprint. Forget whether somebody is on leave or whether somebody is sick. Forget that for the moment. You've just finished the sprint, and you were able to deliver 70 points.
Mm-hmm.
Now you are starting another sprint. What would you do as a team?
Okay, so we use that one as the baseline for the planning. Yeah,
that's what I'm looking for. That is what I'm looking for. Because like I said, we start by just trying. Okay, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. But by the end of the sprint, we could only do 70 out of 90. That then becomes a guide for us. Now, there's a high chance that when we now start this second sprint, of course, when the product owner is giving us stuff for our sprint backlog, once he gets to like 70, we may stop. Or we may say, okay, let's try 75. Because remember, we are still trying. Or we may even go for 80 this time and say, okay, we did 70, but since we are still experimenting, let us take on 80. Or we may decide to just stop at 70. There's no hard and fast rule about it. So we start this second sprint. Let us now assume we were able to deliver 72. By the time we now finish our second sprint, we were able to deliver 72. So as you can see, roughly now, but if we add the 72 to 70 and do the average, roughly our velocity is 71. I just want you to see the pattern here. So we've now done our second sprint, and we are roughly around that 70 something area. And then we do the third sprint, maybe we're able to deliver 70 again. So as you can see, we are sort of in that range. So we can then decide as a team, having done 3-4 sprints, to say, you know what, our velocity is around 72. That is how your velocity emerges. Now, while we're talking about velocity, let me expand on this. Velocity is a planning tool. Velocity is to help the development team plan. It is not a performance measure, which sometimes they try to use it as a weapon. You know, the stakeholders, the product owner, why is your velocity low? The last time you did 70, now why are you doing 40? That is not the purpose of velocity. It's not a performance tool and it's not a weapon for performance at all. It is so important, especially during interviews. It is not a performance tool. It is a planning tool. It is so that we can plan as a team what we can commit to. Now, coming back to what you said, Franca, that is one of the reasons why it is a planning tool. Okay? We are a team of 9 people, and we've been working sprint by sprint, and our velocity is roughly 90. If our velocity is 90, that means on average, each person is doing like 10 points on average. Okay, I'm using these figures to make our calculation easy. So if on a particular Monday morning where you are starting a new sprint and the product owner is going on and wants to get to 90, and based on the example Franca gave, 2 people are on holiday for the next sprint. 2 people are on holiday. So because 2 people are on holiday, we cannot commit to 90 like we normally do when we have a full house. Instead, we're going to commit to 70, give or take, because we know that normally we deliver 90. That means roughly one person is delivering 10 points during the sprint. So give or take, let's see what we can do with 70, because 2 people are missing. You see the importance of velocity? It is a planning tool. It helps you plan your sprint. It helps you plan what you can commit to. That is the whole point of velocity. Anything else done with velocity is an anti-pattern. If you try to do anything else without velocity, it is an anti-pattern. Now, when we look at our burn down and burn up chart, it gives us an idea of how we are progressing in terms of our velocity. Now, the whole point of velocity is so that we can also have conversations based on what is going on, based on our progress. Here's a burn down chart. So if we commit to 90 stories, let us assume we have a full house, and we commit to 90 story points, and we have just started our sprint on a Monday morning, okay? And this is a 2-week sprint as usual. And we make progress till, say, Friday. If we make progress till Friday, that means we've already done about 1 week, or maybe Monday morning of the following week. If by Monday morning of the following week, we have only done 15 story points out of 90, it should be cause for alarm. It should be cause for a conversation. And when I say cause for alarm, not to blame anybody, but hey, guys, what's going on here? 1 week into our sprint, we committed to 90 story points, but we've only done 15. At least on average, roughly, we should feel that by 1 week into our sprint, we should have at least done like 40 or 50. 1 week into our sprints. But 1 week into our sprint, we've only done 15 points. It now prompts us to have a conversation. Our sprint is going to end on Friday. That means we still have like 60, 70 something to do. What is going on? Why are we stuck? What is holding us back? Do we have any impediments? Is somebody struggling with a code? Is somebody struggling with testing? Is there a backlog piling up somewhere that is creating an impediment? It creates an opportunity for a conversation. And that is why you have visuals like this. So this is a Jira visual that plots a graph based on the input of your stories. As you are moving your story from to done, because you will have columns, to do, in progress, done. As you are walking through your stories and putting them in the done column, a graph is being plotted on your behalf. A graph is being generated. So on a daily basis, graphically, you can see what is going on visually. You can see that, okay, we are on day 4. We have, out of 90 story points, we have done 15. We are on day 5. Out of 90 story points, we have done 60. You can see that trend. And based on that trend, you are either happy or you have cause for concern. So as a Scrum Master, you need to be familiar with these artifacts. And as a Scrum Master, when you see that they seem to be stuck, you then help them provoke that conversation. It is supposed to provoke a conversation so that we can figure out what is going on, why we are stuck, and we can then come together to resolve that problem. Maybe a tester is stuck and things are piling up, and that is why things are not getting done. So maybe some of the work was already done, but the tester is overwhelmed. We can all come together and quickly help the tester to get things flowing again. Because what we have is a blockage. To get things flowing again so that we can see, we can change the visuals. Does that make sense so far? Any questions at this point? Yes. Any questions, please?
None from me.
Is my explanation clear? Dele, you were saying something?
No, I said I'm good.
Okay, cool.
It's clear.
Everybody good?
Yes, we're good. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
I'm good, sorry.
Okay, cool. So yeah, it is to provoke a conversation. We have burn down chart, and with the burn down chart, it tells you what is outstanding to do. So the gray line that you see here is the projection. As you can see, this graph is showing us that a sprint is starting on November 3, and the sprint is going to end on November 14. Okay? Now, when we talk about sprints, we are talking about Monday to Friday. So a 2-week sprint is 10 days, 10 working days, because we don't count Saturday and Sunday. We don't, Agile does not, encourage weekend working. So when we say a 2-week sprint, we're really talking about Monday to Friday times 2. That's 10 working days, okay? So as you can see, this particular sprint here, they committed to 50 story points. This axis is for the story points. They committed to 50 story points, okay? And by day, if I could draw a line here, by day 5, they had, no, by November 5, beg your pardon, they had done, let me see, they had done, I think this is how you plot it, yes? Yes. This is, okay, no, this is what is left to do. This is what is left to do. So by day 7, for example, they had done, sorry, by November 7, they had done about 25 story points. So the burn down chart gives us information of what is outstanding to do, whereas the burn up chart gives us a visual of what has been done, okay? What has been done so far, okay? So if you look at this graph here, it tells us that the ones in red have been completed. So as you can see, there's practically little left to do here, maybe just a few points left. So the red tells you what has been completed. The blue tells you what was actually the total that was committed to, okay? So in terms of our practicals, I believe we've done enough to help us to start thinking about our practicals. But before we move into our practicals, I'm going to look at what we call design thinking. And if you recall, I did give you a video and a few slides to look at. Have we had time to look at the video and the slides for product visioning? Anybody? Because if we haven't, we still have time to do that before next weekend. Because next weekend, if I check my calendar, I believe I want us to kick off the sprint August 3rd. So I'm just trying to check the calendar on my phone. Next weekend is when we really start breaking down and looking at our epics. So yes, yes. Next weekend is 25 and 20. No. Next weekend will be 1st and 2nd of August. And we will kick off our sprint on the 3rd, which is a Monday. We will kick off our sprint on the 3rd. So that means by the 2nd, we should have a backlog. That's what I'm aiming for. By the 2nd of August, we should have a backlog, okay? albeit, rudimentary, but at least we must have enough stories to go into our first sprint. That should be our aim. So please, if you haven't already had time to look at the slides and the video for product visioning, please do so that when we start talking about, planning our high-level releases, looking at our vision statement, we know what we're talking about, okay? It does make it easy if you put in a little bit of effort before we actually come together, and it makes things smoother. So are we good so far with the estimation, with the velocity explained? If we're good, let's look at this London Bridge case study. So this is going to be our case study. This is what we're going to work on. Okay, so London Bridge University, LBU. London Bridge University is 110 years old. It is a great institution that has been successful over the years. They are still operating the old-fashioned way with paid media advertising. In the last 5 years, there has been a steady decline in admissions at a rate of 7% annually. However, with a new VC in place, it was decided at the last strategic meeting that it is time for LBU to go digital. As part of their digital transformation, one of the major requirements is to have an online presence. In other words, this institution, LBU, they now want a website. And this website should serve as a one-stop shop. This website should serve as a one-stop shop. It's going to be a website where we can take payments, a website where a student comes, visits the website, and they're able to do everything that they need to do, to the point of packing their bags and attending, coming to school, having their accommodation, knowing where to go on their first day. Everything that they need to know. This website must be a one-stop shop. So this is going to be our case study. Now, we have all been to universities, we've all been to higher institutions, we know what is expected, we have children who go to school. So we sort of have an idea of what the epics should be here. We have an idea of what the features should be. So if I go to a typical university website, I want to see something like about us. So tell me about the university. This university has been around for 110 years. They give, they have so many number of students that has graduated from this university. They offer this program, this program, this program. They do postgraduates as well and everything. They do PhD, everything that might be necessary. Accommodation as a student, I need accommodation. If I'm a student who drives to school, I need parking space for my car. As an institution where you have thousands of people, you need some medical facility, you need gym facility, you want people to stay healthy, you need some kind of catering facility, you need to have all the faculties. We all know how that rolls. So this is where, when you start elaborating on your product vision, this is where you are having all these discussions, okay? So now, talking about product visioning. This is, when we start our project, we're going to assume, when we start this project, we're going to assume that it's going to take us 1 year to deliver this project. Of course, we don't have 1 year to do it, but we're going to do some kind of mapping to weeks. So if we assume that this project is going to take us 1 year, that means we have 4 quarters. And like I have said before, a release is a business decision, and a release incurs a lot of costs, a lot of risk, a lot of overheads. So which means we may decide that at the end of every quarter, we're going to release. That may be our own business decision, that we're going to release every quarter. Okay, I'm just using this as an example. We're going to release every quarter because of the overheads that comes with releases. So which means we will have 4 releases. 1 at the end of Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. That is when we're going to release. But you and I know, and that is the high level. So by the time we come together and have a discussion about all the epics, all the big work we need to do that we are eventually going to break down. So for example, somebody could say about us, okay? But you and I know that about us as an epic also has different things. So what are the things you want to talk about us? So you have the tab about us on the website, but what do you want to, about us, you might want to talk about the location, why the university chose that location, something like that. You might want to talk about all the students that have graduated from that university. Whatever information needs to go there. So this is where we are saying, okay, when we deliver our first release, what are the things we want to deliver? This is where you have your high-level roadmap. It can also be your release roadmap, okay? Based on how you want to release it, if it's not too granular. And you and I know that if we look at each quarter has 12 weeks. Each quarter has 12 weeks. So if we're running a 2-week sprint, that means every quarter we're going to run 6 sprints every quarter because we're running a 2-week sprint. This is sort of what you will find out there. When you go out there, you'll find that they have big epics they want to release quarterly. But those big epics translates to, you know, what is being released on a 2-weekly basis. So you will see that high-level roadmap, okay, with different inputs there based on what they want to achieve. So each quarter has 12 weeks. And if we're doing 2-week sprint, it means each quarter has 6 sprints. And each sprint is 2 weeks, which is 10 working days. And during your sprint, that is when you do all your ceremonies, okay? Now, for our case, 3 months will now be 1 week. So we are going to have, did I get that right? Because we're going to run a 3-month, we're going to run a 3-month sprint. So once we start our project, we'll finish it by around August because I really want us to get into it. So, but we're going to do a release. We're going to do a release every week. We're not going to wait 3 months. We're going to do a release every week. So in terms of our own release, we're going to release every week. And bearing in mind that our sprint is going to be 1 week, not 2 weeks, because we don't have that kind of time. We want to learn quickly. So we are going to make our sprint 1 week. That's what I've noted here so I don't forget. But our entire project will be 3 months. I hope that makes sense. Our project for this training will be 3 months, but we're not going to run 2-week sprints. We're going to run 1-week sprint so that we can learn every time we come. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Yeah? Okay. Any questions? Any questions or comment? Please type if you have any questions or comment, please. Otherwise, let me move on. Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so talking about product visioning. Imagine this university. So with this university, the stakeholders have told us what they want. They want an online presence. At this point, we know the stakeholders, the team has been formed. We all know our roles. Roles have been defined, okay? And this is the project we're working on. We need to then get into what we call a requirements gathering meeting or session, if you like. This is where we are talking about, okay, what do we want for this website? What is the vision for this university? Remember, it's got to be a one-stop shop. It's got to be a one-stop shop. And this is where design thinking also comes in. So with this design thinking, without developing anything yet, we take our pencil, we take a piece of paper, and we come up with a prototype on paper. So when we do our design thinking, we're going to do it using like a collaborative tool, just for us to go through what design thinking looks like in real life. When we talk about design thinking, sometimes that could be your sprint 0. When you go out there, you will sometimes hear people talking about sprint 0. You have a lot of dialogue about what is sprint 0, does it exist in Scrum, whatever. Some people have mapped that to be sprint 0. So this is the sprint where we are getting ready. This is the sprint where we are doing the product visioning, we are doing the roadmap, we are getting the backlog ready, and we are doing like a prototype on paper. It's like saying you're taking your pencil and a piece of paper, just, you know how architects will give you like an architectural drawing. You know, it's not perfect the first time. So we do what we call a prototype on paper, just to have like a feel of what this website is going to look like. And we can actually show it to our stakeholders to say, and they go, yeah. Oh, actually, can you put that button here instead of there? Can you put that one there instead of there so that when people come, they can see it quickly? Whatever. It's called a prototype, and it's a very, very skeletal prototype. So which means at this point, we are not even spending much money at all.
Sorry, Mary, excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry. The design thinking bit, yeah?
Yes.
Will it be the work of the developers? Or
it's everybody's work.
Team?
Everybody, the whole team. The whole team. At this point, we have the whole team, and you will come to see the benefit. We have the whole team. The stakeholders are part of this meeting. The entire, everybody that has interest in this is part of this initial meeting, because we are sort of trying to gather as much information as possible. Okay? But you see, in real life, when we start talking about these stakeholders here, they don't always have that kind of time. And when you go out to the real world, you'll find that a lot of people think this design thinking phase is a waste of time. It is not. They want to, oh, you know what, let's just start developing it. Let's not stop waste time doing prototype on paper first and all that. No, it is time well invested. Because you see, during this design thinking phase, it carries everybody along. It brings to everybody's understanding the big picture. Because we're all together, everybody that has any hand in this project is here, including the stakeholders. But like I said before, in real life, the stakeholders might be so busy that they may not be there with you every single day. This design thinking can take 2 weeks. It can take a week, depending on the size of this project. Okay? So those that are important to be there every single day of this design period must be there. However, some stakeholders, like I said, you know, these people are very busy. Maybe what they need is every day to give them an update. Maybe they will attend the first one or the second one, first and second one. And then maybe after that, all you then do with them is give them an update of the outcome of all the thinking that is going on a daily basis. Because this is the preparation phase. So the developers are there. The developers can see what needs to be achieved there. They key into the bigger picture. Because you know what I said before about developers? They will just bring requirement to them. And when they code it, they will code it to the best of their ability. They will make assumptions. And by the time that product is delivered, it may not be 100% what the customer wants. But when you go through design thinking phase, you reduce your risk of producing the wrong product. You reduce your risk of delivering the wrong product because the tester was there. The user experience and user interface people, they were all there. Everybody was contributing. And people were asking questions immediately. Is this what you mean? So assumptions are being clarified immediately to say, oh, is that what you are saying? Oh, because that's how I'm seeing it. And I'll go, oh, no, actually, this is what we mean. So we are clarifying assumptions immediately. By so doing, we increase our chances of spending our time delivering the right product. I hope I'm making sense. And while we are doing all of this, we are coming up with our epics. We are coming up with our epics. We need this epic. We need this one. We need a pharmacy in the university. We need a gym in the university. We need a medical center. We need a science faculty. We need art faculty. We need... Your requirements are coming out. It says my connection is unstable. Can you guys still hear me?
Now we can.
It's back now.
Yeah.
It's back now. It went off.
Okay, when did I lose you?
Well, it was
just where you picked up.
Okay. So this is so important because everybody is carried along and we increase our chances, or should I say we minimize the risk of developing the wrong product. If you remember the cardboard example I gave you, you are putting cardboards together, but you don't know why you are putting it together. By the time they now tell you, oh, this cardboard you are putting together is being used to help refugees. It's being used to help children during Christmas period. It's being used to help university architects, students to do their prototypes. Your approach, your purpose, your connection with that work changes altogether. That is what you're doing here. You want people to understand the reason behind this product. You want them to understand the reason behind the product. Why are we developing this product? What is the output? And what is the ultimate outcome? Because you see, output is one thing, outcome is another. You can give me output and I don't have outcome. That can be the reality. I buy a car, but I'm not enjoying the car. It's different from I have a car and God, I enjoy driving this car. So you give me an output, but do we have outcome? It is the outcome that is about the impact. What impact is this website going to make? So by getting everybody together during your design thinking, it helps a whole lot. And what it means, even though some people are reluctant to invest, because imagine telling an organization that we're going to spend 2 weeks on design thinking, but during this process it's just paper that's, we're just going to show you paper of what we have done, a very skeletal. Some people will tell you, that's a waste of time. Why don't you just start building the thing straight away? But you see, when you start building straight away, the time you didn't want to invest initially, you eventually invest it going forward, because a lot of things will become unclear to you as you move forward. Oh, you now start looking for one stakeholder to ask them questions. You now start saying, this assumption I made, is it correct? So that time you didn't want to invest in the first place becomes even more expensive as you move forward. Whereas if everybody had been carried along properly, there would have been more clarity on what needs to be delivered. Now, bear this in mind. It is high level. It is not detailed. We will do our detailed planning as we go through our sprint planning on a 2-weekly sprint basis. I hope that is making sense. Okay, so we minimize our risk. So when we have a roadmap, our quarterly product roadmap, because we have done our product visioning based on our design thinking, we have done our product visioning, we now know all the epics we are going to work with. Sometimes those epics can be delivered in 1 quarter. Sometimes it may span more than 1 quarter, okay? Which is okay, that's not a problem, okay? So if your epic spans more than 1 quarter, then based on your backlog, you know part of what you are going to deliver for that epic for this quarter and part of what you need to deliver for the next quarter. All that will be broken down into more detail in your product backlog. And that is why we do that, just to have an idea. So if we have our LBU release high-level planning, it might look like this. First quarter, we are saying we need a landing page, we need the undergraduate program there, we need the postgraduate program there, something like that. And then Q2, we are saying we need them to be able to register, we need them to be able to pay, and we need the medical center. Q3, accommodation and parking. Q4, postgraduate, PhD. This is just a sample to give you an idea of high-level releases. So at the end of Q1, this is what we will have. At the end of Q2, this is what we will have. It's a high-level roadmap. So which means by the end of Q1, when we release this website, users must be able to log in. Undergraduate students must be able to view their undergraduate programs, and postgraduate students must be able to view their undergraduate and their postgraduate programs. They may not be able to fully register yet. That is what this roadmap is telling me now. But they can view it and maybe register the traditional way. So they come there, they see what they want, they phone the organization and say, I want to register for this, or they go in, because we are still developing it. They can't pay online yet. But by the end of Q2, they will be able to register online and they will be able to pay online. You see how we are making progress slowly, okay? So this is what your high-level roadmap will look like. So if your high-level roadmap looks like this, then it means that when we look at your backlog must be aligned to what you want to release. So the way you have arranged your backlog, you are saying the first few items on your backlog are the things we want to do so that we can have release 1. So which means this release 1, these things here are the things we're going to do for the next 3 months. From top here to where you have release 1, these backlog items, this is what we're going to deliver over the next 3 months. But remember, priorities can change. But the fact that priorities can change doesn't mean we shouldn't have an initial plan. We have an initial plan, and this is our initial plan. The product owner may now come and say, actually, you know what? Let me move this one to release 2. Let me move this one to release 1. That is fine, as long as you're still within your planning period. Okay? So This is mapped to Q1, Q2, Q3, and so on and so forth. And I think I have another picture here that makes it more elaborate. So if we have our main backlog, we have planned our release, we are now saying, what are the sprints that will deliver that release for us? In our case, we know we're going to have six sprints because we have 12 weeks in a quarter. And if you do 2-week sprints in real life, that means you have 6 sprints. So that means 6 sprints worth of work is what we deliver release 1.0. I hope it is clear. If it is not clear, let me know. Is it clear? This is where we're going to stop. Questions and comments. Is it clear? Please unmute yourselves now.
Yeah, so far it's good to me.
Any questions at all? Any questions? Unmute yourselves, please. Any questions? Any comment?
I think I'm fine. I'm fine.
Daly, are you good? Ndidi, are you good? Sylvia, are you good?
So good.
Yeah, it's all good.
It's all good. You sure? Okay.
Yeah.
This is where we're going to stop. If I go back, Grace, are you good? Grace Shaba, are you good?
Yeah, I started already.
Okay.
Yes, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
good. Thank you.
I know it's a lot of information, but by the time we start working on the case study, everything we have covered so far will begin to make sense because you're going to start getting your teeth into it, so to speak. So design thinking is very important and is becoming popular. That's why I'm talking about it. Because I work as an agile coach and I've seen the hiccups that teams face because they omitted that design thinking thing. Yes, they end up with a lot of problems. So they now start ping-ponging information that they should have sat down together and gathered and asked for questions, asked for clarity, clear assumptions were not done. So they now start their sprint, working on assumptions, only to come to a sprint review and the stakeholder is saying, no, this is not what I meant.
Yeah, so I just want to add something.
Please do.
So these design people, they're usually business analysts or perhaps product owners because they're kind of similar.
You have
analyst
it's the team, it's everybody. You have your BA normally in your sprint in your development team. You have a business analyst in your development team, and you have a product owner. So your business analyst will work very closely, more than everybody else, will work much more closely with the product owner. The business analyst is part of the development team, but as a business analyst, you are helping to generate requirements. So a business analyst works very closely with the product owner. This design thinking is everybody, including the developer.
I know. Okay. I know it's everybody.
Okay.
I'm just saying that where I worked, anyway, we had two groups. Okay, so one group was using the business analyst, solution architect as the lead in this design thinking, and he was also the product owner. The other team, the product owner is called product owner, but she would do the solution kind of diagram. She would say, these are the things that are inside it, and obviously share it with the team so that the developer can say, oh no, we can't develop that with, perhaps it's Microsoft Azure we're using or something or the other like that, and say we will need this extra thing to do that. So that's the kind of contribution that they will make to that.
Exactly. So imagine if this information does not come up until when they've already started the sprint. So there's more value in this information you have just shared with us coming up during the design thinking. Is that correct?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Exactly. There's more value in knowing that now. And we're going to come to artifacts where we are using use case diagrams. I'm going to share that tomorrow. During this design thinking, We are looking at data flow diagrams. We are looking at architecture. We are looking at use case diagrams. Okay? We are looking at database design. We are looking at everything so that we begin to have an idea of how we want to approach this product and the work that is involved. And come up with our product visioning, come up with our product roadmap, come up with our release plan. That is what we are doing during this initial phase. And it makes so much sense to do this instead of just, do a quick requirements gathering and then hit the road running, only to now start coming back and asking questions. Eventually, you actually spend more time in the end than if you had invested this time up front. So during this design process, we are looking at the design. It's just like you want to build a house. You will sketch it now. An architect will sketch it. You will see what it looks like roughly, even though it's not a final, proper, computer-aided design. It is just pencil sketches, but it gives you an idea where the door is, where the window is, where the landscape will be, things like that, where the garage will be, you have an idea. What the roof looks like, you have an idea, even though it is not yet the real thing, okay? So we will look at data flow diagram. During this period, we are looking at the security issues. We are looking at the database requirements. We are looking at the flow. And in the process of your use case, there's what you call use case. So take, for example, we're designing a banking app, or we are designing some kind of withdrawal system. A use case will be, how does a customer interact with this system? So if I take my bank card and I go to an ATM, we can simulate that use case before that ATM is even developed, or the software that will work on that ATM is developed. So that use case will be, a customer comes to the ATM, I put my card in. If I put my card in, what happens? A software will read my card. When that software reads my card, that software will go and verify that that card is authentic. Because remember, there's always a chip in a card, there's always a long number and other things. So what is being verified, I may not know as a customer, but something is being verified. When it has been verified that this is an authentic card, I get a message saying, put in your PIN number. Then I put in my PIN number. When I put in my PIN number, another check is triggered. The software will go and check if that PIN number is correct for this card. If it is correct, it will now ask me a question. What do I want to do? Do I want to check my balance? Do I want to withdraw money? Do I want to deposit? It will ask me a question. That is a use case. So in the process of developing all these things, you have to have what we call a use case diagram or a use case description. And you will see an example of that tomorrow. So if we were developing a hospital intake system, a patient comes in, the patient gives their name, gives their NHS number. What next? The administrator will check it. So as we look at this use case, we are looking at the interactions with the system. So if I'm a user, how am I interacting with the system? If I am an administrator of that system, how am I interacting with the system? So if I'm a receptionist, for example, in a hospital, the patient comes to me. Let's even go back to the traditional way. A patient comes to me, gives me their name. I type it on the screen. I see that they are our patients. I ask them a few security questions. I do the triage to see where they need to go or whatever, and stuff like that. So in simulating a use case, you are actually coming up with stories. You are coming up with requirements. So if we go back to the ATM example, we are saying as a user, I should be able to put in my PIN number and have it validated, something like that. As a user, I want to be able to withdraw money from the cash machine. As a user, I want to be able to change my PIN number if I forget it. That is a use case. And in the process of going through this use case exercise, you are coming up with the requirements. So you see why we say the requirements, even though the accountability or value delivery lies with the product owner, everybody helps the product owner when it comes to user stories and requirements. The product owner can't do it alone, even though the buck stops with them. Okay? Any other questions? I hope that is clear. So we will look at some use case diagrams tomorrow. We'll look at some data flow tomorrow. I mean, we are not developers, but I want to take us through the sort of things that happens in a development environment, so that as a Scrum Master, it's not unfamiliar to you when you start working out there as a Scrum Master. When they are going through their design thinking process, you know exactly what is happening, and you can even add value to it, okay? In terms of their interaction, in terms of facilitation, you can help them have a session that is highly productive because you know what is going on. So we are going to simulate stuff, things that happen in a typical software development environment. We are not developers, so I'm not expecting anybody to code anything, but we can use PowerPoint to simulate our deliverables. That's what we've done in the past. Use PowerPoint to simulate our deliverables. Go through the sprint planning processes and see how things are supposed to happen in reality. We'll do all of that. Ensure we can see what the conversations are like going back and forth, and why things happen the way they happen. And then not only that, because we are a team, you will begin to see the dysfunctions of a team, of an agile team. You will begin to experience it from here, the dysfunctions that you will experience as a Scrum Master. And when you experience those dysfunctions here, we correct them, and you begin to know what to do as a Scrum Master when you see those anti-patterns when you start working. Let me stop here. It's 9:34. Let me stop here. Okay, guys, that is it for today. If you don't have any more questions or comments, is that okay? Unmute yourselves, please. Is that okay?
Yes.
Are we good to go? Can we end it here today?
Mary,
Yes.
Yeah.
are we still meeting up at 12?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good.
We're meeting at 12 for the...
Yes, yeah.
I already shared the link. I hope we all got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we meet at 12. It's a new tool. It's a simple tool, and it's quite intuitive. That's not to say towards the end of this program, we won't look at Jira and Confluence. We will look at Jira and Confluence because it's also quite popular, but there are so many other tools coming up that are much more intuitive. So I thought, why not? Let's use Quick Scrum for our practicals. Yeah. So I'll see you at 12. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye
Okay.
for now.
Thank you.
Wow.